All right, I think. Yeah. It says we're good. I like how I wait till the last second. See what happens. Okay. Minimize all this stuff. Activate this. That's good. This is excellent. All right. I don't know. Okay, I think this is running. Welcome to my super professional stream, everyone, that nobody's watching. Okay. Are we good? Do you think they're up? Ah, yes, I see it. Joining list space. Start listening. Excellent. Beep boops. Accept. Wow. That was so calming. Your magic beep boops. Well, my friends, welcome everyone. This is Tuesday Tezday. Hope you're all doing well. As usual, we'll give it a couple minutes for the room to fill, and then we'll get into things. Today, as always, I'm joined with Kryptonio and soon to be Mr. Kevin Mehrabi, man of the hour. Kevin's been working across a few different parts of Tezos, including Tezlink, TezosX, DeFi infrastructure, and how all of that connects to real usage and commerce. Rather than jumping straight into individual projects, I want to spend this conversation talking about how all of these pieces fit together, what problems they're actually meant to solve, and where people tend to get the mental model wrong. We'll touch on Etherlink, DeFi primitives on L1, TEZEX, Tezfin, stablecoins, liquidity incentives, and what recent experiments like Apple Farm taught us now they're done. The goal here isn't updates or demos, but clear thinking about structure, trade-offs, and consequences. Kevin, when you get here, thanks for the time for joining today. We look forward to our chat. But before we get into the interview, let's check out some headlines from around the community. First up is an article on drop.art from Object Labs. This piece focuses on how drop.art expands what artists can do on Tezos when it comes to blind minting. It walks through how the platform works, why the setup matters, and how it fits naturally alongside Object's existing tools, rather than sitting off on its own. The core idea is simple. Artists now have a straightforward way to run blind drops without needing custom contracts or external setup. Drops live as their own collections, show up across the object ecosystem, and feel familiar to collectors from the first click. The article also highlights some of the design choices that make the experience feel intentional on both sides of the mint. There's also good context around how this builds on previous object work, like Bootloader, and why this kind of tooling matters for long-term creative workflows on Tezos. If you're releasing work, planning a drop, or just keeping an eye on how art infrastructure is taking shape, this one's worth a read. We'll link it so you can dig in after the space. Next up, Spotlight is the announcement of... Next up on Spotlight is the announcement of Tezlink ShadowNet. This one's aimed squarely at builders, but it matters for the bigger picture too. Tezlink ShadowNet is the first public testnet for Tezlink, which is Michelson runtime, planned as part of the TezosX roadmap. The article lays out what's live today, what kinds of contracts and tools already work on the testnet, and why this step matters for keeping existing Tezos development paths intact as scaling expands. If you've ever wondered how Michelson-based apps fit into the longer-term scaling plan without starting over, this post connects those dots. It also hints at what's coming next, including how Tezlink and Etherlink are expected to run side by side down the line, and why that matters for composability across runtimes. If you're building, experimenting, or just want a clearer sense of where Tezos X is heading at a practical level, this one's worth reading in full. We'll drop the Spotlight link so you can check it out after the space. If you're trying to keep up with what's actually happening across Tezos, the baking sheet makes it easier. It's a short weekly email that pulls together the project updates and community activity that matters, without padding it out, just the things worth knowing that week. You can sign up at bakingsheet.tezoscommons.org. Quick reminder that nominations for the Tezos Community Rewards Program are open. There are two ways to nominate. You can fill out the short form at tezoscommons.org/rewards, or you can post on social media using hashtag TezosCRP. If you're tagging someone else's post, that's great. If you're making your own post, like a short list of names, add a one-liner about what each person did. That context really helps the review process. So again, use the form or tag TezosCRP with a nice little reason. If you're new to Tezos or helping someone get set up, Kukai is one of the easiest wallets to start with. It runs in the browser, doesn't require a big setup process, and makes it simple to send, receive, and interact with Tezos right away. If you want something lightweight that gets out of the way, Kukai is a great place to start. All right, well, we got that out of the way. We'll leave that there for now. Have we found Kevin yet? Has he appeared? Do I just not see him?
No, I don't think so.
No, he's missing. We got to find Kevin.
I don't see him either, at least. I don't know.
Okay, just making sure. I'm going to poke. Kevin. Sir. We need you on stage. So how are you, my man? What's new? What's going on?
Doing good overall. Tried not to watch at the market the past couple of days. I don't usually watch it anyway, but yeah. Working on some stuff here.
Is there a point where you can zoom out and it's still profitable and then you feel better?
Not anywhere close now.
Dang. I don't try to stick my head too far into those numbers. Those numbers are not the most exciting.
Yeah. Well, they are good for accumulation, but we are not talking trading here, right?
I don't know how to trade. Last time I traded was Magic Cards, and that was at a 7-Eleven for, I think, a Vesuvan doppelganger.
Yeah. I mean, I don't trade either, but like long term, even, holding.
Oh, 99.9% of the time, bro. It's because I like it. Whatever it is, it's because I like it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anyone else does.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
so maybe something came up to him, and
yeah, it's quite possible.
He doesn't show up, soon. We could just turn it into a community call, I suppose.
Sure. Let's invite some people up and have a chat. We'll just open it up, have a nice, relaxed one.
Yeah.
And it happens. When Kevin wants to come back to us, we'll say hi.
Yep.
So anyway, welcome to the Tuesday Tezday with Kevin Mehrabi community call. It's in honor of Kevin Mehrabi. If you want to send him some flowers. He didn't die or anything. He just isn't here today. Or maybe he did
To be
die.
fair, I was excited to listen, on what he had prepared for like Teslink and stuff, because I think he was like one of the main people that were gonna try out, to deploy contracts and stuff. So it would be very interesting. But
Yeah,
we'll
and I
reschedule
also
this.
I kind of wanted to ask him about his some stuff that he's working on, which sounded pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to come chat, just come say hi. I see some oldies but goodies. I see some favorites. I see some people I haven't seen in a long time. No, we're not going to let our Yang Tana come up here. No, I'm kidding. Can we get Ryan up here? Yes.
I want to come chat. I'm so tired.
Dude,
And,
I came across some weird video of some
Yeah?
lady like smacking her lips in the ear of a speaker, and it was the grossest, nastiest sounding thing. That it was your speakers, bro.
Wait, what? What are you talking about?
It was you know how like you just end up in the weirdest places on YouTube, and it was some lady like smacking her lips into the ASMR microphone.
Oh yeah, I know all about that. I did that
It was
for a little
utterly
while.
disgusting. Like
Not me.
it was like nails on a chalkboard. Like I don't even know how to explain
It's
it.
a kind of thing you either love or hate. That's what ASMR is.
Yeah.
But I guess Kevin's not coming today, huh?
I don't know.
So-
I think we hope he's okay. I'm pretty sure he's fine. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean he's here all the time, so I'm surprised.
Maybe it's timing
Yeah.
too. I'm sure maybe he'll show up in an hour and be like, "Oh,
Yeah, sometimes, daylight savings and all that.
Did that happen?"
No, but
You're
it's
too
a thing.
kind, Ryan. You're too kind.
It has
I-
been a while ago, to be fair.
I don't
Yes.
observe it. Remember, I'm in the desert. We're like that one pocket of the world where it's like it doesn't make sense to burn more oil to have more AC running during the day. The whole idea was, I mean, if we want to get into daylight savings, but
Okay.
ooh, that's better. I like it.
Well, but I did wanna, since if it's not happening, I did wanna chat with you guys about a few things,
Sure.
because I had a pretty interesting weekend.
That's right, dude.
Uh,
So you went to a gamer, like a gaming college, basically.
Dude, it blew me away. I had no
Game
idea.
jam. Gaming jam.
Yeah, so I went to a game jam, right? And then so that's basically a hackathon for gaming devs. And I'm like, oh, these guys seem like they're pretty well organized, and because that's been the challenge since I moved here to Seattle, right? Like a lot of creative places have been struggling in the last few years, right? Due to various reasons. So yeah, it's been tough. It's tough out there, but yeah. So I went in, and then I think I told you guys like they wouldn't let me talk about NFTs because it was against the rules, right? But I appreciated the fact that they had rules, because I went, everywhere I go, like it's falling apart, and it's just like, oh, that sucks. So, but anyway, I went to the game jam, and I do this like maybe 2 or 3 times a year, I believe. That's what they said.
Okay.
And they have people from all over, kind of both locally and online. So it's like a hybrid event. So that was already interesting. Like, so there was like 150 participants. Oh wait, there it is. Okay. So I'll make this quick. So
No, keep going.
yeah, they have a whole freaking college. It's a 4-year college, and it's dedicated to game development. They have yeah, they have like a faculty, they have a student union, it's like like holy shit, man! Like gaming came a long way since I was a kid. Like it was, yeah. Um, there was even so there's 39. So they basically made like a quick prototype of a game in like 48 hours, which is nuts, right? It's not That's
Yeah.
not that long, and but they came through. They had like some pretty cool ideas, and there was like 39 of it, 39 games made in a weekend.
Were they
And
allowed to use like AI?
some of them did. Actually, there was like a controversy over that. They got in heated arguments about AI. Apparently,
What was the argument? I'm really curious.
Well, you know, the whole like, oh, this is stealing people's work versus like, hey,
Oh, so they were using like AI assets, you mean?
I don't know the details. All I know is that some board members resigned a little while ago, apparently. But that's just besides the point, you know. But it's like, okay, well, the fact that it's a hybrid event, I thought was really cool. And then I started seeing possibilities for like people on Tezos to like participate in these jams. So yeah, so so we're gonna have a talk with one of the organizers there this week and see what we can do, you know. And then it's pretty cool.
It'd be really cool to get them at TezCon.
I would love to, yeah, and yeah, you know, you're the Tezos gaming guy, so if something comes up,
yeah, I'm down, but I use AI, so I could be controversial. All right, Ryan, I'm kicking you off. We got the star of the show here. Okay. I appreciate you coming up and sharing.
I was just stalling.
No, you aren't stalling. You're not Pol Pot either.
The star is here.
You're like, you can be a Churchill. You can't be a Stalin. Anyway, get off my stage. No, I'm kidding. I love you, man. Thanks for coming up.
I am off.
All right. Hey, man of the hour, Kevin. Sorry we had to wake you up from your cat nap. I am so sorry. I know you were like super busy. Welcome. How are you, sir?
Hello. I'm sorry. I actually, when you said like do a show, I thought you meant like just the video recording thing, because that's what we're talking about. You weren't very clear, so it's actually all your fault.
Sure. I reached out a couple days ago to talk to you, and you left me unread. Yeah. So yeah, well, it is my fault. You're right.
Anyway, it's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Are you ready to do this?
So, of course.
Are you sure?
Born ready. Yeah.
Because I got a whole bunch of questions about tap dancing and, you know, Fred and Ginger, because, you know, you're in LA.
What?
I got him. See, look, I got him so confused. That was awesome.
That's the reference we're making?
Yeah, we're doing some 1950s. Yes. 1940s.
There we go. Well,
good morning.
How do you want to start this?
How are you? You know what? We'll start it off right. Kevin, it's a pleasure to have you here. Yes. Thank you for taking the time to do this. Sorry that it feels like it was dumped on you and the miscommunication. I do shoulder that. I apologize. Bro, you got your hands deep in a lot of stuff going on in the background that a lot of people have not really had a chance to maybe see or experience. Before we get too deep in the weeds, right? Why don't we just do a little zooming out before we get into anything specific? So you're working across Tezlink, Tezos, DeFi, and just commerce in general. Before we go deep, how do you describe the platform you're actually trying to solve right now?
Well, let me clarify. So what I do is Tezos DeFi. That's the quick answer of what I do. So decentralized finance and building the economic rails that we need on Tezos. Whether that's just for DeFi in itself for people who want to do trading, borrowing, lending, or if it's to expand the Tezos economy overall in the way that finance plays a role in any economy, and that's where the commerce passive integration really comes in, because what I do affects commerce. So when you talk about art markets and those things, gaming, domains, any kind, or baking as well, like anything where there's monetary transactions going on. And then and what I build and what I work on started on the L1, and now but it's very Tezos specific, not just to be something just on Tezos, but also to showcase and really make use of the expanding and new technologies that are coming out and only on Tezos. So having that close association with it is very seminal to the strategy. But yeah, so the way I've gone about it has been with all of those things. So it's never been really about DeFi for the sake of DeFi, but what DeFi is meant to be for Tezos. So that's where the problem that's being solved is we haven't had yet a cohesive mutualist synergy between the DeFi sector of Tezos, the finance sector of Tezos, and the other aspects of Tezos. And that's been the source of a lot of problems that can be, now I feel we're in a stage where the ecosystem can resolve that. And why this matters so much, it's not just because it's beyond the sum of its parts. It's an explosion that really takes place. It really makes everything else and it grow to a sustainable level that's exponentially beyond anything we've ever seen in the past. These things can't live in silos, and too long they've lived in silos. So that's really how I'm approaching it, not just with what we're building, but also in other things that I'm pushing for. I think recently, hold on, let me get this. I tweeted about this with like the FAA tokens we still don't have on I put that up there
On Ledger Live.
on Ledger Live. It's so critical. Like, yeah. So I think what happened in the last year with Etherlink, there are a lot of good experiments, and I think a lot was learned in the ecosystem from, say, on Trill Tech Nomadic side, those who would be in a position to help us with support rails on what's needed, where gaps are, how to see the whole thing systematically. Whereas before that, I don't think that was something that was really appreciated, this sort of end-to-end user experience. So I think we can apply those learnings to where I think they're going to make the most impact right now. And that's going to be starting with a sovereign like Tezos proper, that is the Michelson runtimes,
Okay,
the L1,
okay.
but Tezlink.
Hold
Yeah.
on. Okay, so let's roll into my second question. What role do Tezlink and TezosX play in how you think Tezos should be used day to day, not just theoretically?
Yeah. So Tezlink, and the way Tezlink is going to roll out, and this is ecosystem wide, it's not going to be like a separate place. It's where the way everyone's going to be designing stuff, it's going to be so like it's really coming to the L1. So like if you're an L1 user, like it's an extension of what you've already been doing, as opposed to a separate destination or environment. Even though technically it is like a layer 2, and that is being brought in. But so what it provides, its scalability and sub-second block times, those are the immediate benefits. Later on, we can talk about like cross runtime operations and that kind of stuff. But really, it's that sub-second block times. So when it comes to DeFi, for example, like a trading terminal, we can do high frequency trading the way you would do, like, the way you would do kind of day trading, the way like Wall Street guys would expect to do having their trading desks and doing it, the way that you could do on other networks that have their sub-second block times. So high frequency trading, just like rapid fire kind of stuff. So that's really key for really expanding the market and getting people to come in scalably to come into Tezos. So far, what we've had just on the layer 1, like we just went from 8-second block times down to 6. It's really hard to do high frequency trading. Like you can't do it if like you're just for a single, just like every block is 6 seconds, let alone the confirmations that come a couple after that. So no, you need to make it seem like instantaneous, seamless.
Is that like snail mail compared to a instant message?
No, I like the way I said it better. Yeah.
I didn't understand what you said.
What would I
No, I'm
compare
kidding.
to? I think what I would compare, I don't know what I could compare it to. It's just like night and day. You can't do it otherwise. Like it's just not possible. That's why, with Etherlink, we had the first taste of that. But really, the only application that was built on Etherlink at all that actually made use of that and actually made use of Etherlink for what it is, and not just having something on another just for the sake of having an EVM was Hanji. Hanji was the only application that actually made use of Etherlink for what it could afford. That couldn't be done on the L1. That couldn't even be done on most other EVMs. So like that's something that yeah, so like that's the way to think of it. It's like it's not just about building it just for the sake of having it, but showing to the world it's like this can only be done here. But beyond that, that's for TEZEX. Tezos Exchange, by the way. That's where the name is. So TEZEX. And then for Tezfin, which is the lending platform, that's more like it doesn't particularly need to be on an L2 for speed wise, because it's not something that necessarily needs that kind of high frequency trend. Well, when it gets to scale, maybe kind of, but more like in an indirect way, like sort of like in the way that it interacts with a DEX kind of thing. It is going to be interesting when we do cross runtime, and this is something we can make use of it with Tezfin, cross runtime collateral and borrowing. So you can have maybe collateral on one runtime, like say on Etherlink, and then but borrow on Tezfin, or have your collateral or borrow on Tezlink, or have your collateral on the L1 and then borrow on the L2, and or like vice versa, have it on Tezlink and then borrow on Etherlink, and as well as the integration that will happen with TEZEX, where you can do leverage trading using those Tezfin lending contracts. So that'll be a really cool and unique advancement as well. But the first things we're doing, but with TEZEX, like we're going to get to advanced features like that cross runtime stuff. We're going to have perpetuals. We will have a CLOB. So we'll have like an order book. We want to have a full trading experience. But in the beginning, what we want to do is really just have like the baseline anchor for a DEX on Tezlink. So making sure that builders have something to test against, making sure that people can actually migrate their liquidity positions. So we'll be building something so that not just bridging your assets over, but if you have like a DEX or a liquidity position from a legacy pool that maybe doesn't have a front end anymore, maybe that went away, that we can actually accommodate that because they're permissionless smart contracts. We can just build a front end for them and then maybe bring them over so they can withdraw from their old liquidity positions from these older DEXs, but then also come into a new liquidity pool on TEZEX.
Okay, so you've given us a lot of hard, concrete examples with a lot of jargon. And unless like we're deep in it like you are, man, I'm not going to lie. It goes right over
let's
our
record
heads.
it.
It's fair, but listening to it again, could you what would someone misunderstood if they thought about all this? Because, I mean, you've just said a lot. There's got to be a core thing you're talking about here that all those things are addressing.
I think for the basic idea, if you want to simplify it, particularly for people who are coming from the outside and don't understand the nuts and bolts of like these types of applications, or even outside of finance, basically we're making it more like what you get in Wall Street, bringing that to Tezos, and having something unique for Tezos. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to combine both the composability that you know Web3 to give you, all the new kind of cool features you can't otherwise get, with the simple expectation and reliability and scalability and speed of what you get from traditional finance. So like that's it in a nutshell, I would say.
Okay. All right. So what kinds of things should live on Etherlink and what really shouldn't then?
On Etherlink?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess so it's more about the approach to Etherlink that I'm particular about. I don't feel it was ever meant to be a proper, like a destination. And I think that's maybe where the messaging got conflated. It was always meant to be a conduit for two real markets. One, people who are coming from the EVM world, where they kind of can port almost entirely their apps from different EVMs, different chains, and say, hey, you want to come to Tezos because you like it better for intrinsic reasons of Tezos, but you don't want to rebuild your app in Mickelson? No problem. Deploy to Etherlink. There you go. Now you're on Tezos. And if you like that, then maybe the next version you can do it in Mickelson because you know that's better.
Yeah.
That's how it was initially pitched. It changed along the way, but even then, that wasn't the only use of it that I always saw, and still that it should be used. It's also a gateway outwards for exports. Like we have these assets here and things that we're doing on the L1. Maybe you have, what's a baseline example? Not just Tez, but say Sirius token, or let's say some algo stables that we have built on the L1, or governance tokens. And they're operating on Tezos, but but we can appeal to maybe the larger market that would want to have it within their EVM frameworks and all of that. Well, how do we get there? Well, Etherlink is effectively the optimal bridge. It's the optimized canonical bridge to the EVM world that we have built as part of Tezos. And so it's a way to encapsule what we have here on the L1 and then bring it to the EVM world. The mistake, I will say, was in making it a destination or trying to make it that way. And I think that's because people's default mode was like, okay, here's the separately branded thing. It's a chain. It's an ecosystem of its own. Let's treat it like it's any other chain. And it wasn't thought of in the context of Tezos, I feel. Also, a lot of the design, I think, in the marketing and positioning of it in the last year, it wasn't coming from those who were coming from a Tezos first stand. Like, they didn't come from Tezos. If they're coming from the outside, and here's this whole new canvas of a blockchain, like, it's only going to be seen as like, let's get liquidity in from the outside. Okay, so they can transition to coming like centripetally to Tezos proper? No, just for Etherlink. Okay, so they're not going to get a Tezos wallet? Tezos wallet, that's too much friction. Let's keep them where they are. Okay, but the whole point was that it's easy to come to Etherlink, and so they wouldn't need to. Why would we incentivize that if the whole point is supposed to be frictionless? If we're going to incentivize, wouldn't it? It's supposed to override the friction. So bring them to the place where you think it's friction. No. We'll just have them hug the periphery. But then we lost the strategic moat. And so I think
there's a lot of mixed messages.
I'd say there are three problems really with it. So part of it was, I'd say attrition is like, in a word, what it was. So I feel like there was builder
that was
attrition.
A result of it, maybe, Kevin. That was definitely a result.
Well, think of it this way. Starting with the builders, right? It's like, well, we don't have anybody who wants to build on Etherlink. Well, let's incentivize Tezos builders to build on Etherlink. Okay, so they did. And then it's like, well, now you have this EVM built thing, this Solidity built module. And you could bring that to any EVM. You don't have to be on Tezos anymore. So there's no lock-in. There's no strategic moat there. By moat, I mean, like, if people don't know that reference, it's like the water around a castle that like keeps, that keeps that layer of separation.
It's a layer of separation.
It's used
from
in
the outside.
Yeah, it's used in a business venture context to say, like, if you go to a venture capitalist or something, it's like, yeah, we're gonna have this thing. It's gonna be popular. They'll ask you, what's your moat? What's gonna make sure that you stay the thing for all time, and like what's gonna keep people in? So we lost that really for builders. And not just for the applications, like Tezos India Foundation, no more. Why? Because that team went off to do EVM stuff, and now they're doing a bunch of different EVM networks. They don't really need to be on Tezos anymore. So Plenty was gone, Tezos India Foundation was gone. So there was attrition on that end. Liquidity attrition is something else we had, because you put incentives out there, and it's like, okay, well, the incentives they're not even for L1 tokens that are bridged over to the L2. And they're not even in L2. That's Mickelson. It's an EVM. It's for Etherlink. It's for an EVM. Okay, well, people would take their liquidity from that was in Tezos, that was siloed within Tezos, and then they converted it over. Like they went to a centralized place or whatever. They could swap that out, and then whether it was their Tez or something else, and then to put it in an EVM format type of asset, so they could get it to Etherlink and then get the yield farming. But once those incentives in, where does it go? Back through the whole rigmarole of getting into Tezos? Why? No, it just goes to the very quick and easy yield farm that's right next door, another EVM. So there's that. Then I think the other part is sort of like a spirit attrition. And I feel like there were a lot of people in the community who felt like, well, like this was about kind of building a new country. And this is not EVM. This is like, maybe they're on EVM too, but they have their EVM thing done. This is about something else. And like, so it kind of felt like there was a loss of belief in itself within Tezos, in that it was going to this direction of being something that it was not inherently. And that was problematic. Like, it was very hard to, so a lot of people left in that regard. It's like, well, what's the point if this is the case? And really the responses, I think, like, the reasons to have gone in this direction of trying to make it a destination. I think all those things could be done without making a destination, but it was like, oh, but it's so convenient. We can get access to so many things, Chainlink, the graph, and all of this middleware. It's so, what, you want to rebuild that stuff on Tezos? Like, no, it'll take so long, it's so expensive, and doing all that stuff. Well, here's what I'd say to that. First of all, it's not like that would be lost by not making it a branded destination. Secondly, some of that stuff, like, rightly can and should be built in a Michelson format, like other ecosystems have done, which, by the way, gets cheaper over time, largely because of AI. And also, some of it just doesn't even matter so much to have right now at this point. And also, it's like that. It's only thinking about the entry points. So it's like, when you trade conviction for convenience, you're really not making a lot of sense. I think on some level, it's actually become more. There's an argument to be made. It was much more expensive to do all this Etherlink stuff, and it will continue to be more expensive to have an EVM-centric focus. The reason being is, if you're one of the EVM chains of many, many, well, it's much harder to compete. It's much harder to retain liquidity. It's much harder to stand out. It's much harder to market, because anyone you'd want to keep, you want to bring into the picture, they're going to only be there for a price, and they have so many other options. Like, they have complete strategic optionality there. And not only that, but getting the on-ramping of all these other EVM type systems, like, the foundation did have to pay money to to have additional support for, like, say, Fireblocks to support Etherlink. Well, we already paid for that for the L1. We already paid for that for Michelson. Why were we paying again for that? I thought this was supposed to be cheaper, less expensive. So, a lot of stuff like that happened. So it didn't make a lot of sense, And also, when it comes to builders, well, if you're going to have them build here, they have a lot of options. You got to pay them more. And why would they stay afterwards? So there's a lot more leverage when people are coming here for a passion and they care about Tezos and they want to build here. And there's a lot less options to leave as well. Sounds weird, but you want to be in the Tezos world. But even if we wanted to have everything, it needs to be done in a coherent way. So I think
to be fair, Kevin, I think that we did get an increase in liquidity compared to what we had, right?
No, absolutely not. Not in any measure.
Stayed.
Okay, let's go
before
into that.
Etherlink. I'm not talking about the peak in 2021 or so, 2022. I'm talking about before Etherlink, 2024, 23. We didn't have much liquidity left on L1.
Yeah, I think
compared to that, we did get an increase, right? And some of it stayed even now that the incentives are off. But I do get your points that there were a bunch of not exactly mistakes, but wrong decisions maybe that didn't make much sense compared to the L1.
They made no sense at all.
Agree.
Yeah, I can only accept it to keep from losing my mind, as they were good experiments, and it's good we did those experiments on something that was sort of off-world in a sense, and protected the Tezos kind of proper brand name from those things. When it comes to liquidity, and this is something where, first of all, I know for a fact that those that were planning and designing the liquidity program, they did not bother to really check with what happened in Tezos L1. before that, which is by any measure problematic. I mean, even if you're going to do your own strategy, it very much helps to learn from the past. Even if that information isn't helpful, you should still ask us just to find out, oh, that wasn't helpful. But it's always like that was, I think, a lot of problems.
Happened? What
I'll
is
get
it
into
that
it.
happened on that one? Yeah.
So we were able to get before, like in 2021, like we were able to get record levels of liquidity, and even though we had to a surprising level, because we shouldn't have had tens of millions or hundreds of millions, because we didn't even have a lending system there. So we didn't have any kind of anchor that would actually keep and retain liquidity, or even or sustainably grow it or anything. But that was what we were able to achieve. And this was a time when DeFi was a lot less known. It was a lot less active. We didn't have a whole lot of other things. Hold on, I got to finish the whole thing. You can't interrupt.
Okay, sorry.
I got to get through the whole thing. So that was a very early time. It was a lot less active. And then, so that was going on. And even before we blew up with NFTs and had maybe more exposure as an ecosystem, we already got to the millions of dollars. We were approaching 10 million for TVL, but before that period. So like we were in a really good state. But then, we didn't have a lending system at that time, and that's why we weren't able to retain anything. The markets overall generally crashed, but the retention, even then, the retention level was still as low as it was. If we're looking relatively, it was enough that you would say, hey, if there was just an incentive program thrown in here, we'd far exceed anything we ever achieved, even at our peak. Not only, but
if
even
we had an incentive program, for sure. If we had an incentive program,
that's part of it.
Actually agreeing.
Yeah.
I'm actually agreeing.
But let's say we didn't have an incentive program at all. Like, let's say we didn't want to spend that money. There are other things far cheaper that we could have done that could even have scaled our TVL far beyond what it was then. Things that are so small but so necessary that they're generally overlooked, and mostly by the people who, if you're not someone who's looking to participate in DeFi, like if you're kind of beyond that level, or just not your world. And that's things like, if you look up a coin that, the first thing you do is Google it or whatever, and then you'd see its coin market cap or CoinGecko page. You'd expect to see dexes, that those are up to date, that they're accurate, have complete information, let the indexes support them. You'd want to see them represented in the different wallets that you choose. Now, these things are relatively cheap, cheaper than an incentive program. But they're things that need a cognitive, like it just satisfies a human being psychologically that like, this is a legitimate thing I can get behind. So much so that if you don't have those things, it's very suspicious. It's a negative. And other things like when and beyond that, visibility, I think, is the through line here. You can't just represent Tez when you're, when, say, the ecosystem, like, oh, we have this new fiat on-ramp. Okay, well, what's there? Tez, we're working on allowing staking and delegation. Okay, what about the other tokens? Nope. Okay, other ecosystems, they like to show a whole host of tokens built on that ecosystem to show that people are building here, that there are assets, but not us, because I don't know why. But it was like, well, we shouldn't be making these deals if they're not going to include all the tokens, or just more than just Tez. Otherwise, we look like we did back in 2018, because that's when we also had just Tez. So that's something. I think that's something that's been learned through the Etherlink process of like, oh, you should show them. And for the banner that you have on the, when they have the Etherlink booth in different events and things, they show the applications on that banner, on that backboard, whatever you call it thing, that are built on Etherlink. That's important. That's proof that people are building on it. You need that. Did we ever do that for the L1? No. So that's why, when you're trying to pitch Tezos to people, everyone's had this experience. People will say things like, does anyone even build on it? Are there any tokens on Tezos?
Kevin,
like, of course they don't know, because we don't represent them.
You've talked about high frequency trading. You've talked about Wall Street. You've talked about all the reasons that the direct. So let's go back to the original question. Who should be building? What kinds of things should live on Etherlink and what really shouldn't?
Well, Etherlink isn't. Well, I feel it should good rounding out for this. Etherlink should go back to the original premise. I think we got it right the first time, which was it should be a mechanism for people to deploy on Tezos who don't want to rebuild their app yet, and it should be a conduit for assets that are built on Michelson runtimes to extend into the EVM world, to bridge over to the EVM world. So it can be more of a. It's just the ultimate bridge, not a destination. We don't need it to be a destination.
Curve is a good example, right?
Hmm?
Curve. Curve is a good example of like they
Um,
deployed on Etherlink easily. You know,
well,
they
here's
hadn't deployed.
Yeah, but the assets that should be on Curve that from the
Mhm.
Etherlink should be things that have been bridged from the L1. Arthur said at TesDev last year, he said like he recommends, he even put it that like to deploy your token on the L1 and then bridge it over to the L2s. That's the recommended path because for one thing he mentioned two reasons. One, for one thing, like that's much more dynamic because you could bridge it to any L2 after that. And the other thing is it lowers the propensity for withdrawal because once you bridge it over, like inherently you have this layer of abstraction that makes it less likely that a person would withdraw after that, as opposed to if they're starting from the outside and just bridging it into Etherlink, well then you can unbridge it out where it came from. Right, to back to the EVM world. So, and I would throw in a third one, which is I think it honors and validates the sanctity of having this base level of trust, the origin of trust being the L1. After all, everything starts on the L1, including the L2, which is these rollups are rollups on the L1. That's how they work. So, I mean, and that's what we've seen. Like, I think artists who have in years past who had experiences when L2s were pitched to them on the EVM Ethereum world, where it's like, oh, but it's better if you can do it on Ethereum if you can afford it. Like it's more because that's closer to the source. It's closer to that origin of trust. We've seen that kind of universally. But so I think one of the specific mistakes to point out, because I don't want to be broad about it, take Tether, for example. Tether, we've had $140 million of Tether was authorized on for Tether for Tezos, right? And then of that, about 40 million was issued, and of that which was issued, only a few million of it, maybe less than 10 million, was ever actually active in the DeFi landscape or in the landscape on Tezos. The rest of it is sitting in a wallet somewhere. And that's problematic for one thing. We definitely don't want Tether to leave Tezos. It's very important and very good when they came in, but we just needed to make use of it. A perfect opportunity to get high utility for it in a great way was to, with that incentive program on Etherlink, not just to get it to be used, but hey, if people bridged it over, fewer withdrawals, higher utility, a layer of abstraction added, and then that could be used for all those Tether pools on Etherlink. And we had the bridge, we had the Tether, we had the reason to do it. We didn't want Tether to leave. And by the way, that's a really concern. They dropped 5 chains in the last 2 years. 5 chains you wouldn't think they would have dropped, and because of low activity. And you know who's the lowest of activity of the chains they're still running on? Tezos. So we had a very big need to get this done. We had an opportunity to do it. We had all the pieces to do it. Did we bridge over and have that as part of the incentive program for Tether that was on Etherlink? No. The incentive went to bridging the Tether from outside other ecosystems into Etherlink. So they're coming from the outside and only bridging to a place that's more on the periphery of the Tezos ecosystem. And so, and also in a place where it's very easy for them to go back where they came from because it's EVM, because that low friction is a two-way street. And when the incentives end, they go right back. So, and that Tether lay dormant on the L1. So, but why did that happen? It really comes down to one thing. Those that were designing the program did not talk or look into the L1 or its builders who could have guided them on this process. And it was a very small thing that could have been corrected very early on. So that's very problematic. It's very important to talk to the people who are there. I don't even just mean me, I mean other builders. So, because for one thing, you can find a lot of great synergies, but also just so many little things. You can't, I think it's tremendous epistemic hubris to believe that no, I'm coming from the outside, so I know. No, you don't. You got to learn from everybody. That's part of the ethos of Tezos. It's you need to get from the collective this knowledge and understanding. That's how we improve. Nobody has the answers. It only comes from the collective, and even then, it takes iteration, feedback, improvement. That's how we do these things. Otherwise, I think what I want to make the only thing I'm really concerned about is I want to make sure that we learn the lessons from the past, that those things aren't lost. And I don't want there to be a wholesale dismissal of the past because again, even
I
the
hope so
Etherlink Apple
too.
Farm stuff, because
I hope so too. But to be realistic, more mistakes will be made in the future as well.
there
We know
should be.
that everybody, yeah,
But
that,
are we
yeah.
capturing the lessons from it? The capital
But
is in the learning from the mistakes.
because we spend a lot of time on this, I wanted to also talk to you before the show ends about like you already deployed on Tezlink, right, on the ShadowNet.
Yep.
So any impressions, any feedback, like any differences, anything you still missing? Because I know it was a very early stage right now.
It's so early that really, like, a lot of the stuff we're finding, like the bugs, it's more like other tooling has to get deployed on Tezlink too. So, like, for one thing,
Is TZK supporting it yet or not?
the what?
The Explorer, TZK.
Oh,
Is
TZK,
it
yeah,
supporting it
TZKT
yet?
is. Yep, TZKT is, yeah.
Nice.
But like
nice.
not all wallets are, like Temple doesn't yet. So Kukai does, but then like we found some things. I don't want to say I don't know if it's necessarily a Kukai issue, could be us. Like it's early, we're still exploring, but but that's also what's good about it. We're like to deploy and then to be able to give feedback and learn from each other so that everybody has their ducks in a row and we can build that kind of engineering culture and understanding can be built around it. So, but yeah, it's so early that it's more like, well, it's there. Let's tear it apart.
It's the very first step.
Many more.
It's the very first step.
That sounds like the
Yeah.
fun
But
times, man. I mean, like, not to deploy on, but definitely to mess around.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be exciting when they finally, make the next milestone of the testnet, where it will be in the same roll up with the Etherlink testnet, and you will have both runtimes. That's gonna be.
Yeah, I mean that's less interesting to me at this point because again, to me it's more about. I feel that's much more about like the salvage value of like, well, we already came this far with Etherlink, so like let's make use of that. That's only going to really matter once we have the synergies between the runtimes. That like there's something to do with it. So, but that first thing we need to do is not think about how these things will connect, like to think of it in the same breadth of Etherlink, but to let's let Tezlink stand on its own. Let's let Tezlink be Tezlink and explore what does that mean? Why is Michelson strong and better? Why like all of these Michelson support structures that people have been building for years? Why? What else can we do with Michelson to make it more optimal? We're not restrained.
That will be showcased by having the dApps from the L1 to also deploy on Tezlink, I suppose, right? Like we will need dApps. Like you are going to deploy TEZEX and Tezfin probably, and your dApps, and maybe we will see Object, for example. Maybe we will see some other apps.
They're looking at the stuff they can do. I mean, it's hard to like. It's not clear what. Like you don't really need it for Object is the thing. Ortea, because it's like these are not things that require sub-second block times. They're not something that are like massive like gas constraints and all of that kind of thing. It's just like no, it's the pace of an art gallery. I think the real like I want to really impress people with what TEZEX and Tezfin can do together. But also let me put this for the way we can, because I did mention what Etherlink could be used for. I did publish on Agora a couple of weeks ago, like a specific program of how one specific thing we can do with Etherlink that magnifies and expands the L1 and the entire ecosystem and all the steps in between and creates a very practical solution to a problem that's been a longstanding thing, something that couldn't be done without this approach. And that is to get a Tezos token to be purchasable on Coinbase. And the way, without having to go through in a non-custodial manner, in a completely decentralized way, and in a way that rewards liquidity providers coming from the decentralized community on an on-chain manner, not outside market makers. And the way that works is basically you take L1 assets, you bridge them over to Etherlink, bridge them over to Base using the OFT contract, because that's part of the bridging. And then from Base, put those assets in a pool on Aerodrome DEX. And that's because Aerodrome has a special relationship with Coinbase because it's built on Base. And any pool that is on Coinbase or that is on Aerodrome, that becomes the source of what would be listed on Coinbase itself. So you can buy something with a credit card like you would anything else on Coinbase. It pulls from those DEXs, but you have the experience of like anything else you would buy on Coinbase with a credit card. So that's great. That'd be great if we could use for Tezos tokens. Before all this stuff, we couldn't do it because that's Base. It's an EVM thing, and we're Tezos. We're on Mickelson. But through Etherlink, using it as the bridge, the way it should be used, we can get there, and in a manner that stays true to okay, but it's canonical EVM, and we're bringing it over there. So that's one example of what can be done. So what I'd like to have done as a pilot program is to do it for USDtz, not just because I think it's a good, volume play because we could do it with Tether as well. And maybe I think it should be done with Tether as well it's a pure play on with Tezos because it's coming from the L1 if it's USDtz, and the activity of there. You can track it a lot better to see how is this actually migrating naturally people to come to the L1 because you get a better margin as you get closer to the source. So that's one example, but that's how we should be thinking about it. So again, I gotta say the idea of just let's only think about friction in and cut all these things so that people could just come to the place that's closest to where they already are and pay them to come and do it and just expect that somehow they'll stay, it makes no sense. Because it defeats, for one thing, it's not a very strong mechanism to get them to stay, but also it defeats the purpose of why we were even doing this in the first place, which was to attract people to come to Tezos in a way that's low friction. So we were incentivizing, we were using something that's meant to override friction to get them to do the thing that was designed to be the low friction thing that didn't need incentives. And then we didn't think anything else after that. So I think we can see the results now. I mean, we kind of knew it was going to play out that way, and it did. And what are we left with? Well, when you take away the incentives, the liquidity goes away. It did. It's continuing to. And the builders are gone who left Mickelson to go to EVM. And now they're talking about any other EVM, and Etherlink, which isn't even Tezos branded, is just one of the many EVMs they're on. So it's not this is very obvious. And then meanwhile, I had tons and tons of people who are just like, oh, is this the dissolution of Tezos? No, just wait till Tezlink. So Tezlink is why everybody, our heart and soul, we should put and focus on that, make sure that it people can see it and understand it and use it, and the applications are really glorifying everything else that we built here in the Tezos ecosystem. That should be the center of focus. I think as for Etherlink itself, I think it's one thing that could be done is a rebrand of it to maybe just call it Tezos EVM or something like that, because at this point it's not doing us net favors by having something that's so abstracted away from something we're already struggling to get name recognition for at this stage. I mean, the good thing is that these things are so easily correctable, and you can't expect mistakes to not happen. You have to expect those mistakes. What you hope for is that you can learn a lot from them and that those things can be easily correctable and you can be better off for the experience. So we're fortunate in that that's what we have. But the most important thing, the only thing that actually hurts is if we deny that those are the issues that happened, because we're so concerned with putting the best face on the past. That will get you nowhere fast. That's very, very key.
So Kevin, if someone's building today, what's the one thing you wish they'd think about differently now? I mean, I know you've talked about positioning internally, what we've done. All that is lessons learned. All that is forward looking. What can we do with that moving forward?
I think it's important to really to go have more of a Mickelson renaissance right now, and to really show the future architecture of like where Mickelson is going, why it matters, why this will be something in 100 years, you'll be thinking about, and extend that with other things that could have were done for Etherlink but should be done for with hackathons and accelerators and people building on it. In the past, Mickelson applications were done for the most part because people were just inspired to go and build them, because they love Tezos so much. But we never had any kind of a systematic way of encouraging that. We never needed to. We had some hackathons kind of here and there, but they're mostly independently done, not like in a formal manner, not in sort of a central planning kind of a way. And when I say central planning, I mean in the sense of something much more kind of formally sponsored uh, by those that are charged with other kinds of development, ecosystem development, and can have kind of a covalent relationship with those areas. So, I was there at the DCA Accelerator. It's in Singapore, but it was a total Etherlink thing. And I was looking around, I'm like, man, if we only had this for Tezos, if we only had like even just a little bit of this, something like that. So, I mean, even if you want to look at uh, the traction that was achieved for the Etherlink DeFi, which still has not ever achieved the peaks of what we had with the L1. But even if it had surpassed it, I feel that what we had achieved with the L1, despite having so many disadvantages, is enough of a tractional proof point to validate what would be even just a little bit of all of that stuff that was done to kind of bolster Etherlink. I mean, it's so obvious. But I've raised this to some that I think, in the past too, where maybe, like once you're kind of like down a certain road and you're in the middle of it, you kind of start looking at information in a way that maybe kind of retroactively proves your original thesis, as opposed to kind of expanding and seeing everybody's viewpoint. Um, but it's more like, well, it was an earlier time. Like, but to me, it's like, yeah, it was an earlier time. That's what makes it more impressive. So, I mean, like we'd be looking at the same event, but depending on how you want to interpret something, you can look at that as a not negative or a positive, something that reinforces your point or diminishes it. You can always look at that half glass, half full, half empty kind of a thing, depending on what you're like. If you're starting with your conclusion, everything will look in the way that you need it to look. But to me, this has just become very kind of obvious. Like we did achieve so much with the L1, the L or not or the Mickelson runtimes. The Mickelson runtimes have much stronger lock-in value. They are have much stronger retention just organically. Organically, we were able to achieve a lot of growth from the beginning. People wanted to come to a new and different ecosystem that was apart from that cluster of EVM stuff they deal with. We get ahead by having a walled garden, not by trying to just sit at the cool kids table and then maybe we'll become cool. It doesn't work that way. I think the other question that I tend to ask about this is more like, it's like, and if you did have your choice of EVMs and you could go anywhere else, and maybe you came to, like, if you're a builder, right? And it's like, why would you come to this one? Because if you want to come to Tezos, you could come to Tezos. But why would you want to come to and if you build something else and you just can't rebuild it for Tezos, that's understandable. But like if you were to come to think of Etherlink as a final destination, why them and why not any of the bajillion other EVMs that are also putting out incentives to build there, or also giving out the grants to build there, and also doing all that stuff? Why? Because we're more decentralized? That doesn't really pan out in the scope of things. It's like there are a lot of flashier things out there. That's a Tezos-centric argument. So I think for people who recognize that, it's very important that with strategy, cultivation, grants and investments, we are rewarding people who choose to build on Tezos, who choose to build on Mickelson and Mickelson first, or Tezos first, or Tezos only. And I feel the opposite has happened in the last 2 years, in which people who were choosing to build on Mickelson were penalized. They were excluded in terms of funding, in terms of strategy, in terms of all of that from the conversation. And instead, you were rewarded if you were completely not loyal to Tezos. You were coming from the outside even and then dabbling into this because we were so like, that's what we wanted to get in. But we can't retain those people, nor does that really bring a structural advantage. It just like the assets, it starts from building something strong at the sovereign origin of trust level and then extending it outwards, as opposed to trying to do it the other way around. It doesn't work that way.
So if you had to pick one, then.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, learning from the lessons of the past, the stuff that did work well for Etherlink, and then applying
That's what
that
you
to
want
where
a
people
new
do have an
person to
organic-
think about?
A new builder? I don't know. In terms of cultivating new builders to come to Tezos or to Tezlink.
Yeah, it got a little convoluted there. I was trying to follow, like, I was trying to apply that to a new builder, but then there's this assumption that they know our deep
Come to
history.
Tezos.
So
What, a builder? I'd say come to Tezos. It's better because it's...
that's what you want them to think about
DeFi
differently.
Well, you have to specify what kind of builder you're talking about.
That was the question, man, and you went off, and I was trying to figure it out, and now I'm getting clarification.
So what would
That's
you
all.
tell a builder?
What would I tell the builder?
You asked me that. You asked me what I would tell a builder. And I interpreted it my way. But if the question
was like, if someone's building on Tezos today, what's the one thing you wish like they'd think about it differently, you know?
I'd say build synergies with the Tezos market and other applications. Do that. Don't think of yourself in a vacuum.
Oh, like don't
things
silo
only
off.
really work when they're connected.
That's actually really great advice, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wild.
Actually, that's my answer for everything. Actually, you can apply that as my
um,
answer for every question. Actually,
we have like 10 more minutes, and I wanted to also ask you, like, do you see any, like, how will it play out with the RWAs? Because we've seen, for example, uranium now on Etherlink. When the time comes and, you know, Tezlink and Etherlink, they run in the same rollup, the two runtimes next to each other. Do you see like uranium, for example, being used in TEZEX or Tezfin, you know, and being brought to people that want to use the Tezos wallets and so on? Do you think that those RWAs will help in any way?
And I talked to Ben Elvich about this, even talking like a year about this and everything about the future. So, I mean, part of what TEZEX, what we're going to do with it, it's like for RWA deployments specifically, is to, I mean, in general, like it's building better analytics that haven't been done on other DEXs, and because that's so seminal. But also for RWAs, I haven't seen on any network anywhere that does RWA stuff that's really giving the types of analytics that commodities traders need, because that's what these are. They're commodities trading. It's what you're doing. They're real world assets, but we're specifying what we're talking about with the uranium, metals, and all of that. It's commodities trading. So there are a lot of different types of indicators that are more advanced beyond what I think the simple swapping mechanisms, have provided, because people need to feel what the terminal that they're interfacing with as a place that they can get all the information to make their informed decisions. And for that to be done in real time. If they're going to do high frequency trading on this stuff, they need to have high frequency information. So that's how I feel we compete better in outfitting something for RWAs. So that's what I want to provide and give RWAs that kind of first class experience within TEZEX. So yeah, I think, definitely like that's the first place we're going to start seeing the kinds of assets that like are beyond crypto assets and stable coins. It's that RWA place. Yeah.
Kevin, clubs, man, you did briefly talk about it, and Hanji's using Etherlink the way it's supposed to be. TEZEX is going to be a club, right?
Yes.
So what are the
So, I
benefits
mean,
of a club? I mean, this is like, we're used to AMMs. Most people know about automatic, it's automated. It's automatic. You buy something, it rebalances automatically. What's a club? Explain it. I mean, this is kind of cool.
so it's the central limit order book. So you can place limit orders for particular prices and then have them fill. And then that's the simple way, but then there are more kind of complicated types of setups. You could basically programming your trades um, in a way that to get the prices you want to get, as opposed to having just kind of a simple swap mechanism that you'd have with the dexes that of the past. And that's where it starts. But I mean, I feel like to get to even more advanced programming, I mean, you can get it to other different levels and permutations of that kind of thing.
Explain what like an
Um,
advanced club would be then.
it'll involve. So I mean, one thing could be okay, so kind of conditionals as to like, okay, you want not just you want to make a trade based on the price coming here to this point, but you also are concerned with the strength of volume to liquidity, and if something is overbought, oversold, is the price there because of this level of perpetuals people are buying, or is it spot trading, or that like these things are done that inform a person's decision as to whether they should buy or not, more than just whatever the price is at that moment, as well as the events that happened and preceded that. So, I mean, like stop limit orders are a version of very small version, but like you could get to much more advanced type of, because of smart contracts, you could do this. It's not really as easy to do in a centralized way. You can make it very, very programmatic. So you can set up like these, basically what an algorithm would think when it's trying to deciding to execute trades or not doing it. You could set up your own version of that manually, uh, like as you go about your day. I mean, at some point it does cross the line where it's like this is not something for a human being to handle. This is something for a program to do. But before that, I think, and
I'm joining. Oh man, I crashed.
I think, over time, people get more advanced. They do want to set things up in a much more complicated way. So, providing those features in a way that's user friendly, um, without getting too far into something that people don't want. And that's where you get to the point where it's like you can't just create it. You have to also listen to the market and see what they're asking for, um, and make sure there's some actual spaces. Then it doesn't matter as much. But Clob is more. So the Clob is to me the user experience side of things more, and in terms of instruments that we're going to provide, I'm excited to get to the point of perpetuals and being able to offer those types of products. It's something we've kind of bounced in. We haven't had them on Tezos yet. There were always little plays to get to do them. They were tried on the L1. There was once a bounty program for it, uh, but like they generate a lot of fees. Um, so that's good. That's good economically, and I think it's good for the Tezos devotee, like that wants to do perpetuals trading on Tezos. Of course, they're going to come to a Mickelson runtime. That's what you do. So I think that'll be fun once we get.
Let me
Mhm.
ask you that. Do you really think that that will play a role? The Mickelson, the strengths of Mickelson, that they will draw somebody that wants to do perpetuals and stuff.
I think it's more about the overall Tezos to a user. It's like Tezos proper, coming to Tezos proper, the origin source, and making sure it's decentralized and away from whatever centralized place they were coming from. I think once we can showcase, here's stuff you could be doing with Mickelson that you can't do anywhere else because it's better, because it's faster, um, formal verification, and all that. As institutions get into it, that's going to become much more important. It wasn't so much in the past. I think that's going to be a really big draw to come in. A lot of this is ethos driven. When people choose to come to Web3 and they choose to be on a particular runtime or chain, it's like a feature they want, that's what was presented to them, or if it's like, well, if there are a bunch of different options, and liquidity and users, like anything you need in terms of a network is the same. They'll go to like whatever they trust more ethos wise. You know, um, sometimes even if it's more expensive, I think it'll be less expensive with Michelson runtimes, more less expensive on Tezos. But I still do DeFi operations on Etherlink. I mean, sorry, Ethereum. Whereas I could be doing it on one of the L2s, and I like this is just for years, because if it's like very sensitive kind of stuff, I'd rather be closer to the source. I trust that a little bit more, and even though I'm paying a little bit more for gas, sometimes much more for gas, I still do it. And I'm not alone. Statistically, that's very common. Like, why do people still mint art on Ethereum? Why do people still do all this? Like, why is Ethereum still the biggest place for DeFi, like as liquidity wise and all that? It's because there is this something psychologically, that kind of a source. So I think even as we go into Tezlink and we're building Tezlink stuff now and all of that, I would not even discount the L1 as still being a preferred place. I go that far for a lot of people, and people wanting to be able to do stuff on that level because they feel closer to the origin of trust.
I can agree on that.
Yeah.
Me myself, obviously, I use it like I still prefer to use the L1
Yeah.
but that's because I'm very much more used to the Tezos native tools and wallets and everything. Like, it's not the same when I'm using Etherlink. I am using it, but not as much or as easily as I do with Tezos. But Tezlink could change that. We will see, because it's the same thing, right?
Everything just feels cleaner and easier and less stressful when I'm doing stuff on Tezos. Like when I'm with a Tezos wallet and doing it.
Yeah, even but there is a part that we are biased as well, right? Because we are used to it. We are used to it.
I was using Ethereum like before Tezos existed. My experience goes back much longer with that. But and I think probably Solana people, like if that's the other thing you do, you probably feel that way about that. When you're with something that's away from maybe it's a lot of trauma that comes from Ethereum. I think that might have to do with it too. But also I feel like there is something towards having an ecosystem that was built after another, in which there is inherently some kind of a revision done. Like, they learned from the lessons of the past and they made something else in a better way. Whereas the old system is still, even though it's improved, it's still held down a bit by legacy methods and norms and that kind of thing. So like, it's always going to be an improvement on the thing that came before it. So I think that might have to do with it too. It's a lot easier to read, I guess, even just Explorer wise, like a TZKT versus Etherscan. And it's like, well, I mean, they could change Etherscan, but why? And if they did, then maybe they had ideas to do it, but they don't want to alienate people who are used to the way it is. But if you're starting from scratch, do whatever you want, and you can design things in a lot more coherent way. The same thing is with all kinds of applications.
Right, Kevin. So we just went over the hour, and before we wrap up, anything that we missed and you would like to share, anything that you would like to be mentioned before we wrap up?
Let's see. Are my articles up? Let me get these pieces out there. I want to share these. Things. So there's the Agora one. Where is it? Oh, I'm going to find this right now. But I can't post anything. Well, okay. So here is the announcement for the launch of TEZEX, or TEZEX on Tezlink. I didn't mention that we did launch our first L1 DEX for Tezlink, or sorry, for TEZEX last week. Quietly did it, still just kind of like making sure everything works right. But yeah, so you can actually participate in the L1. It's still a small pool. You can add liquidity to it. But like, so yeah, there will always need to be stuff on the L1 for that, because I mean, when you're bridging things over, or swapping things so you can bridge them, there's always an inherent need for that. So there is that. We also just updated the IRMs for the interest rate models for Tezfin. I haven't announced that yet. I will shortly. Let me see. And you can try out the TezLink instance. It's probably too early. We'll add a little something so people could give their feedback, particularly for TezLink, as people are building, and there's
I
a
think
need
that
to make
at
sure.
this stage, Tezlink is mostly it's more for builders to try and deploy and play around.
Yeah, it's too early.
Rather than users, right?
I think
Because
other
as you
than
said, they are still figuring out bugs and fixing stuff, and still waiting
Yeah.
on some tools to be connected.
What other applications? Did any other applications launch on TezLink yet? Well,
I
no,
have
I don't
no
think I've
clue.
seen it. So there's that.
All right. Well, Kevin,
see
man,
what
thanks
else
for
we-
taking the time today. I mean, I know we caught you off guard. My bad. That's on me. I'm sorry, man. And next time I won't
You don't
do
have to
that.
keep saying that. We're here now.
I know, but I
Um,
want to apologize. My bad. I'm sorry. But thank you again. And I really appreciate you walking through all of this stuff today. I mean, you have some very, very great points. You talk about some very, very important things that I think do play into a lot of what's going on. And bro, your passion is real. If anyone doubts that you have passion about what's going on here, they've missed it 100%.
I'll send them to you. You'll beat them up.
Well, I don't beat people up. I'll just remind them that, sometimes people do care. Maybe they've forgotten. It's not about you. Well,
I see.
I really appreciate you specifically walking through all that, though.
Of course. And hold on. You know what? Is it my pinned? I think it might be my pinned. Yeah. I was digging around for it, and it's my pinned tweet.
Yeah, I see
Okay.
3 pins.
So it's all
now.
And also, if people, with what's going on in Iran right now, post about the human rights atrocities that are being committed. It's more important that people of all backgrounds around the world, not just Iranians, are posting about it. I mean, it's something the mainstream media has not been reporting very much. It's one of the worst atrocities in modern history. Was committed by the regime in Iran for the last few weeks. So very important that everyone. It's not a partisan or wedge issue. It's a global human rights issue. So if you post about that, you'll make me very happy.
Love you, man. You got a huge heart. Well, folks,
Love you too.
this has been Kevin Mehrabi. We appreciate you taking the time to do this. We'll be back next Tuesday with
sure.
another episode of Tuesday Tezday. But until then, stay curious, stay connected, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.